السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with Surah At-Tin. We did not finish Surah At-Tin from last time, and we were at ayah number 6. At ayah number 6 in Surah At-Tin, Surah number 95. And we recited the ayat. So going straight to the tafsir inshallah. So as we heard with the tafsir of the first few verses of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by At-Tin, the figs, and Az-Zaytun, which is the olive, and they by themselves are great signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that requires for the human beings to reflect upon them. And it's not sufficient just to know them, but to reflect upon everything that is related to these types of ayat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are mentioned in the Quran, because it has signs from Allah, miraculous signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship, knowing Him with His names and attributes. And as the verses, the sequence of the verses refers to the place of the prophethood of Isa alayhi salam, which is refers to At-Tin wa Zaytun Ash-Sham, wa Turi Sinin, the Mount of Sinai, which is the place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa alayhi salam, so the prophethood of Musa alayhi salam. Then وهذا البلد الأمين, and this city, the secured one, which is Mecca, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored the city of Mecca. And this is where the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was from. And it's such an amazing thing also for a person to reflect upon, the one that built the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Kaaba, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and how that the prophets alayhi salam, they passed by these places, but it's never established the way it is till the Prophet ﷺ was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and honoring Mecca by saying وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ, and not referring to a fruit or something like this, to show the importance of Mecca, the best place on the face of earth with the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then al-muqsam alayhi, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swear for is لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We created the human beings in the best way, in the best proportion of best stature. And we talked about that, and how that the human beings are created perfectly for the job that they've been created for. Not for whatever they desire, but for what they've created for. And part of the worship of Allah, which is the purpose of our life, is to feel in need of Allah. So the human beings, their weakness, there are things that they wish they don't have, for example, in this life, that they can get sick, that they would die, these types of things. This is part of the perfect creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of the human beings, with every aspect of the life of the human beings. And then after that, ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that we reduced him to the lowest of the lowest. Anything that has sufl, anything that goes in the lowest levels of things, this is also part of the meanings here. So when he mentioned in the tafsir, the lowest part of the hellfire, meaning the place of the disbelievers, the place of the sinners, and also the general meaning of anything that is in the lowest level, whether it's physical or non-physical meanings. This is where we stop. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ. Ayah number 6. Save those who believe and do righteous deeds, then they shall have a reward without end. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. And as by now we should see that this is the way of the Quran that shows that the exception, to prepare oneself to be among the exception, to, as they say, توطين النفس, That means your nafs needs to be well established upon the fact that you would be from among the exceptions, not from among the norm, not from among the majority of the human beings. It's not about the majority or minority or being among the minority or so. It's upon being the truth, to be upon the haqq, to be upon the al-iman wal-amal salih. So if that's the norm, mashallah, this is great, and this is what every believer would wish for it to be. If it's not, it's already established that this is the purpose of life. So that's what he says, illa, except من من الله عليه بالإيمان والعمل الصالح, except the one that Allah bestowed his favor upon with al-iman and the righteous deeds, والأخلاق الفاضلة العالية, and the virtue of manners that are in a high level of virtue. And as you see here in the tafsir, he mentioned the rights of Allah and the rights of the human beings. So this is what the believers, with the belief in the righteous good deeds. فلهم, so to them, for them, these high level of rewards as a result of the high level of actions that they were upon. فلهم أجر غير ممنون. غير ممنون, that means غير مقطوع, not severed, not terminated. بل لذات متوافرة. لذات is the plural of لذة. The desire is in abundance. وأفراح متواترة. أفراح is the plural of فرح. Joy, happiness. متواترة, that means it's also not 1, 2, 3, it's in abundance, it never ends. ونعم متكاثرة, and favors that are all over the place. From الكثرة, from also in abundance. في أبد لا يزول. So the rewards that they get in itself, no one can ever imagine, and it's in abad, forever. ونعيم لا يحول, and a delight that never changes. أكلها دائم وظلها. It's things that they eat is forever, and it's shade, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. So also this is something to reflect upon. فلهم أجر غير ممنون. And as the word mamnoon gives the meaning of al-inqita', or something that is severed. So and al-mamnoon comes from al-man, is when someone is given a favor and he's been reminded of it, which is in this dunya, as we know, this is one of the things that a person ruins his rewards by reminding people of his favors. Those who يمنون عليك أن أسلموا, those who would praise themselves, or they say that we became Muslims or something like this, as if they've done a favor to the deen of al-Islam, for example. And لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the believers not to terminate, not to stop their rewards by al-man, by reminding people. So the believers in the Day of Judgment, there's nothing whatsoever that would be less than a perfect reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's that not even is being done for them, even though it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a reward for them when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remind them of the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is where it comes from, and also from al-man, which is the meaning of when something is terminated and it stops, they would say man al-habl, the rope. When it's man, that means when they cut it, so, or almost about to be torn or something like this. So this is again for the rewards of the believers. غير ممنوع, غير ممنون, أي غير مقطوع عنهم, that would never be severed away from them. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says فما يكذبك بعد بالدين أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. Then what, or who causes you, all disbelievers, to deny the recompense? And then the last ayah, which is not Allah the best of judges? So فما يكذبك بعد بالدين. So this is as a result of what's mentioned before from the beginning of the surah, of the creation of the human beings in the best proportion, then to be returned to the lowest of levels. And then what's mentioned about the believers. So then comes this istifham, or this questioning, and it's the purpose of it is to condemn the ways of the disbelievers. فَمَا يُكَذِّبُكَ, what made you deny the truth? That means you don't have an excuse in denying the truth. فَمَا يُكَذِّبُكَ بَعْدُ, after what has been mentioned with these hujaj and these signs from Allah, what would make you then disbelieve in the truth? He says here, أي شيء يكذبك أيها الإنسان بيوم الجزاء على الأعمال. What made you, O humankind or human beings, made you deny the recompense upon your actions in the day of Al-Qiyamah? When you وقد رأيت من آيات الله الكثيرة ما به يحصل لك اليقين. When you have seen the abundance of the ayat and the signs of Allah that should bring al-yaqeen or certainty in you. ومن نعمه ما يوجب عليك ألا تكفر بشيء مما أخبرك به. And from the favors of Allah that make it by necessity that you don't deny or become ungrateful of any of what you have been informed with. So this khitab, or this addressing the disbelievers, because of their disbelief, and also addresses, anyone that to humble themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the two meanings here that he mentioned, the day of Al-Qiyamah, and that's what Biddin means, as a result of the many signs that's supposed to bring al-yaqeen, and from the favors that should bring the person to be grateful to Allah. Then the surah ends with أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَحْكَمِ الْحَاكِمِينَ. So the questioning is not Allah the best of judges, and that's this istifham here, or this questioning is to make the taqreer, or to confirm one and only one answer, which is yes, indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of judges. So here, as he says, فهل تقتضي حكمته أن أحكم الحاكمين, the best of al-hakimin. And al-hakimin, when it's translated as judges, but the word al-hukm, or the judgment, comes from al-hikmah, comes from the wisdom. So it's not just any rule, but it's based on the perfect wisdom of Allah. So basically the questioning saying, as he says in the tafsir, فهل تقتضي حكمته أن يترك الخلق سدى لا يؤمرون ولا ينهون ولا يثابون ولا يعاقبون? Does the hikmah, the wisdom of Allah, that he leaves his creation like this, sudan, without any purpose, without being commanded, without being forbidden, without being rewarded, without being punished? أم الذي خلق الإنسان أطوارا بعد أطوار, or the one that created the human beings one stage after the other, وأوصل إليهم من النعم والخير والبر ما لا يحصونه, and he made them from the favors and the khayr and the goodness, reaches them where they cannot even count them. وربهم التربية الحسنة, and he raised them in the best way ever. لابد أن يعيدهم إلى دار هي مستقرهم وغايتهم. He has to return them back to a dar, to an abode that is their establishment and their objective. التي إليها يقصدون, and this dar, which is the hereafter, they seek it. ونحوها يؤمون from al-imama, from also leading themselves. And this is, as he says, تمت ولله الحمد. That's the end of the tafsir of the ayah by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and if someone after finishing the ayah would say bala, which is the answer to the question, which means yes, indeed, وَأَنَا عَلَى ذَلِكَ مِنَ الشَّاهِدِينَ, and I am upon those who witness upon this, there's no harm. This is something that can be done, especially in the optional salah, in the night prayer. In the fard, it's mashru' still. In the fard salah, it's still valid, but it's best to make it in the nafl salah. أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. And this is how to interact with the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.